ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। ॐ अखण्डमण्डलाकारं व्याप्तं येन चराचरम् तत्पदं दर्शितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। Shivoham friends, today we are going to take chapter 3, subtle and gross bodies. Ram said, "It is even so as you have said, that the mind is a pure essence and has no connection with the earth and other material substances. Mind is truly Brahma itself. Now tell me, O Holy One, why the memory of his former states doesn't cause his birth, as it is the case of mine, yours, and of all other beings?" Vasishtha replied, "Whoever had a former body, accompanied with the acts of his prior existence, necessarily retains its memories, which are the cause of his being reborn. But when Brahman is known to have no prior act, how is it possible for him to have memory of anything? Therefore, he exists without any other cause except the causation of his own mind. It is by his own causality that the divine spirit is self-born and himself his own spirit. He is everlasting. His body is born of itself from the self-existent Brahma. This unborn or self-born Brahma has no material body whatever, except his subtle spirit body, Ativahika, or astral body, Lingadeha." Ram said, "The everlasting body is one thing, and the mortal body is another. Now tell me, sage, whether all created beings have a subtle body like that of Brahma?" Vasishtha replied, "All created beings produced of a cause have two bodies, subtle and gross. But the unborn being, which is without a cause, has only one body. The uncreated Brahma is the cause of all created beings, but the uncreated spirit have no cause for itself, has only one body. The prime lord of creatures has no material body, but manifests himself in the empty form of his spiritual body. His body is composed of only mind, and he has no connection with the earth or any other material substance. He is the first lord of creatures who stretched creation from his empty body. All creation is only forms of images or ideas in his empty mind. They have no other pattern or originality in their nature. It is a truth well known to everyone that everything is of the same nature with its cause. Brahma is non-existent being in the manner of perfect consciousness. He is purely a mind form. He is an intellectual entity and not material. He is the prime cause of all material productions in this physical world, and he is born of himself with his prime mobile force in the form of the mind. It was by the first impulse given by the prime moving power that this expanse of creation came to be spread in the same ratio as the currents of air and water are in proportion to the impetus given to them. This creation, shining so bright to our sight, derives its lights from the luminous mind of the formless Brahma, and it appears real to our conceptions. What we experience in dreams is the best illustration, like the enjoyment of sexual bliss in a dream. In a dream, an unreal object of desire presents itself as an actual gain to our fond and false imagination. The empty, immaterial, and formless spirit is described as the self-born and corporeal lord of creatures in the form of the first male. He remains imperceptible in his state of pure consciousness, but becomes manifest to all by the evolution of his will. He cannot be discerned in his absolute state, but becomes conspicuous to us in the display of his nature. Brahma is the divine power of will. He is personified as the first male agent of creation, but he is devoid of any physical body. He has only the spiritual form of the mind, and he is the sole cause of the existence of the three worlds. It is Brahma's will that makes the self-born exert his energies, just as human desires impel all mankind to action, and as the empty mind manifests itself as a mountain of desires. Then it forgets its everlasting and incorporeal nature and assumes to itself a solid material body and shows itself in the shape of a deceptive apparition. But Brahma, who is an unsullied understanding, is not involved in forgetting himself. That occurs through the transformation of his unknowable nature to the known state of will. Being unborn of material substance, he sees no appearance like others, who are exposed by their ignorance to the misleading errors of falsehood that appear before them like a mirage. As Brahma is merely of the form of the mind and not composed of any material substance, so the world, being the product of the eternal mind, is of the same nature as its original source. Again, as the uncreated Brahma has no cause for himself, so his creation has also no cause other than himself. Therefore, there is no difference between product and its producer, and it is certain that the work must be as perfect as its author. There is nothing like cause and effect to be found in this creation, because the three worlds are only prototypes of the archetype of the divine mind. The world is stretched down in the model of the divine mind. It is not formed by any other Holy Spirit. Creation is as immanent in the mind of God as fluidity is inherent in water. The mind spreads out this extended unreality of the world like castles in the air and builds paradise cities. There is no such thing as materiality, which is as false a conception as mistaking a rope for a snake. Hence, it is impossible for Brahma and other beings to exist as individual bodies. Even spiritual bodies are also non-existent to enlightened understandings. As for the material body, it has no room in existence. Manu, who derives his name from his mind, that is Manas, is a form of the will soul called Vranchi, creator. This is also a name of Brahma, Viranchi. His dominion is the mental or intellectual world, Manorajyam, where all things appear in the form of realities. The mind is the creative Brahma, Viranchitap. Through the exercise of its inherent will, Sankalp, for beginning, or for we can say creation, it displays itself in the form of the visible universe by development of its own essence. This creator or creative power is in the form of the mind, just like the mind itself is of the form of the creator. Neither has any connection with any material substance, which is a mere creation of imagination. All visible things are contained in the bosom of the mind, just as the lotus blossoms reside in the seed of the lotus. Hence, there is no difference between the mental and visible appearances of things. nor has anyone anywhere ever doubted this. Whatever you see in a dream, whatever desires you have at heart, and all the ideals of your fancy, together with your ideas, notions, and impressions of phenomena, know that it is your mind that is the receptacle for them all. But the mind can choose to hold phenomena as desirable, making them as harmful to their beholder as an apparition is to a child. The ideal of phenomena develops itself as the germ contained in the seed, and in its proper time and place, it becomes as large as a tree. If there is no rest with what is real, there can be no peace with phenomena that are full of troubles and give no solace to the mind. It is impossible for the feeling of the perception of phenomena to ever be lost to their perceiver. Yet, only its subsidence is said to constitute liberation. With this, chapter 3 ends. Let us take chapter 4, that is Nightfall, creation of objects. Valmiki ji describes, while Vasishtha, the leading sage, was speaking without interruption, the entire assembly was intent upon listening to him with a fixed tone and tenor of their minds. The string of bells that warriors tied to their waists ceased to jingle. Everyone was motionless. Even the parrots in their cages ceased to warble or flutter. The ladies forgot their dalliance and remained quietly attentive to the lecture. Everyone in the royal hall was fixed in attention, as if they were painting or statues. Only an hour remained before the closing of the day, and the sunbeams became agreeable to all. The busy bustle of the world was dwindling away with the glimmering light of the setting sun. The beds of full-blown lotuses exhaled their fragrance all around, and soft breezes were playing about as if to attend the audience. The sun glided away from his daily course and advanced to the top of the solitary mountain where it sat, as if he meant to reflect on all that he had heard. The shades of night began to cover the landscape. Frost began to spread over forest lands as if they were cooled by the cooling lectures on philosophy. Now people failed to gather in all directions, as if they had availed themselves of the sage's instruction to abate the fervor of their exertions. All objects on earth cast their lantern shadows, as if they were stretching their necks to hear Vasishtha preaching. Then the chamberlain humbly advanced to the monarch of the earth and begged to inform him that the time for the rituals of evening washing and service was about to expire. Upon this, sage Vasishtha stopped his sweet speech and said, "Let what has been said, mighty king, be all for this day. I will resume my lecture and speak of other things tomorrow." The sage held his silence, and the king responded, "Be it so as you will," and rose from his seat. For his own good, he honored the godly sage and other seers and Brahmins with due respect, and offerings of flowers, water, worthy honorary gift rewards, feasts, gifts, and the homage. Then rose the entire assembly with the king and the sages. The gems and jewels that decked princes and pupils shed their luster on the faces of all. There was a commingled tinkling of bracelets and armlets as the throng mingled in their exit, mixed with the flashes of the necklaces and brocades that decorated their bodies. The jewels attached to the tufts and crests of hair on the tops of their heads emitted a jingling sound resembling the humming of bees amidst their flowery braids. The face of the sky, shining on all sides with a purple color, reflected by the golden ornaments on their persons seemed as if it was pleased with the wise sayings and sense of the sage. Celestial visitors vanished into the air, and earthly guests retired to their homes on earth, where they performed their evening rituals. In the meantime, Black Night made her appearance on earth, and like a bashful young maiden, withdrew to the closet separate from the rest of mankind. The door, the Lord of the day, passed to shine on other lands, for truly it is the avowed duty of every good person to give the benefit of equal light to all. The shade of evening veiled all sides and uplifted the canopy of the starry sphere on high, which, like the spring atmosphere, was emblazoned with the star-like kintsugi flowers. The birds of air took to their rest in the hollows of mango trees or on the tops of kadamba trees. Like honest people of fair dealing, find their rest in the purity of their minds and the contriteness of their inner hearts. The skirts of the cloud tinged with red by the slanting beams of the setting sun, and with a shade of yellow color upon them, decorated the western hills with vast of yellow garb, while the sky crowned their heads with jamming wreaths of starry groups. The goddess of evening, having departed after receiving her homage, was followed by her train of dark night shades appearing as black-bodied friends. Vetals. A gentle and cooling breeze was blowing, softened by the dewdrops of night, and opening the petals of Kumud lotus flowers, bearing their fragrance all around. A thick gloom covered the face of the nature, and the stars were hidden under the mist of night. All the quarters of the skies, with their overhanging loose and hairy mist, seemed like the faces of widows shrouded by the dark, dishevelled hair of mourning. Now appeared the moist orb of the moon in her ambrosial form in the milky ocean of the sky, to moisten the mundane heat with her milk-white beams. On her rising, the thick mist of darkness fled from the eastern hemisphere and became invisible in the air, just like the darkness of ignorance is put to flight from the minds of monarchs when they attend to wise sayings. Then the sages and seers, the rulers and priests of the people, took their rest in their respective beds, as the words of Vasishtha, full of meaning, rested in their recesses of their heart. As the thick darkness of night, resembling the dark complexion of death, receded from the arena of the skies, the dewy dawn of day, with her slow-moving pace, followed close on its footsteps. Twinkling stars disappeared from the sky, just like flowers on trees are blown away by wind and strewn on the ground like the fallen stars of heaven. The sun became visible to the eyes. His rays roused them from sleep, just as the new rising faculty of reason becomes conspicuous in the minds of enlightened great souls. Fragments of clouds shining with sunlight spread a yellow covering over the eastern hills, which were still decorated with strings of stars pendants on the crest of their lofty heads. After the performance of their morning services, all the terrestrial and celestial congress assembled again at the royal hall in the order and manner of the day before. The full assembly took their seats and sat without moving, like a lake covered with lotus remains calm after a storm. Then Ram addressed Vasishtha, the most eloquent of sages, with honey-like words about the subject under investigation. He said, "Tell me plainly, O Venerable Sir, about the form of the mind, which developed itself in all things of the universe as they were its offshoots." Vasishtha replied, "Ram, the mind has no form that anyone can see. Other than its name, it has nothing substantial, only the formless and irremovable void. The mind, as an entity, Sat, is not situated in any part of the outer body, nor Is it within any cavity of the heart or brain? But know it, O Ram, to be situated everywhere as the all-encompassing void. This world is produced from it, and it is like the waters of the mirage. It manifests itself in the forms of its fleeting thoughts, which are as false as the appearance of secondary moons in the mist. The thinking principle is generally believed to be something between the positive and negative, or real and unreal. You must know it as such and no other. That which represents of all objects is called the mind. There is nothing else to which the term mind is applicable. Know that will, volition, is the same as the mind, and that the mind is no different from the will, just as fluidity is the same with water, and there is no difference between air and its motion in wind. For wherever there is any will, there also is that attribute of the mind. Nobody has ever taken will and mind to be different things. The representation of any object, whether real or unreal, is mind, and that is to be known as Brahma, the great father of all. The incorporeal soul is in the body is called the mind, and it has in itself the knowledge of all senses and every everlasting ideas of the physical world. The learned have given different names like ignorance, intellect, mind, bondage, sin, and darkness to the visible appearance of creation. The mind has no form other than a receptacle and reflector of ideas about the visible world, which, I repeat, is no new creation but a reflection of the mind. The visible world is situated in an atom of the great mind, just like the germ of the lotus is contained within its seed. The visible world is as innate in all-knowing mind as light is inherent in sunbeams, and velocity and fluidity are innate in winds and liquids. But the visionary ideas of phenomena are as false and fleeting in the minds of their observers as the form of a jewel in gold or water in a mirage, and they are as wrong as the foundation of castle in the air or seeing a city in the dream. Because phenomena appear to be real to their observer, O Ram, I will cleanse them from your mind like dirt from a mirror. Just like the disappearance of the appearance makes the observer no longer an observer. Know that this is what happens when the mind is in a state of separation, that is detachment from whatever is real or unreal in this world. Having arrived at this state, all the passions of the soul and the desires of the mind will be at rest. Like torrents of rivers at the calm that follows the stillness of the mind, of the wind. It is impossible that things having the form of space, earth, and air will appear the same in the clear night of reason as they do to our ordinary sight. Thus, when the observer comes to know the unreality of the phenomena of the three worlds, as well as of his own entity, then his pure soul attains knowledge of the solitude of the divine existence, Kaivalya. Such a mind reflects the image of God in itself as in a mirror, while all others are like blocks of stone, incapable of receiving any reflections at all. After suppression of the sense of I and you, and the error of the reality of the outer world, the observer becomes withdrawn and remains in his sitting posture without seeing external things. Ram replied, if I cannot suppress my suppression of entity, my perception of entity, or an entity is unable to become a non-entity, and if I am unable to see phenomena as non-existence, Then tell me, O Holy One, how can I too uproot this disease of our eagerness for phenomena from the mind? A disease which bewilders the understanding and afflicts us with a series of troubles. Vasishtha replied, now hear my advice, Ram, for the suppression of this illusion of phenomena, whereby it will surely die away and become utterly extinct. Know, Ram, that nothing that is can ever be destroyed or become extinct. Though you remove it, yet it will leave its seed or trace in the mind. This seed is the memory of such things which reopens the idea of the phenomena in the mind, expanding themselves in the fallacious notions of the forms of big worlds and skies, mountains and oceans. These fallacious notions, called faults and defects of understanding, are obstacles in the way to liberation. But they do not affect the sages who are liberated. Again, if the world and all other phenomena have real existence, they cannot confer liberation on anyone, because phenomena, whether they are situated within or without us, are themselves perishable. Learn therefore this solemn truth, which will be fully explained to you in the subsequent parts of this work, that all things appearing in the forms of emptiness, elementary forms, the world and I and you are known entities. They have no meaning. Whatever is seen as apparent is nothing other than the undecaying and imperishable essence of the Supreme Brahma himself. The abundance of creation is an expansion of his fullness, and the quiet of universe rests in his quietude. It is his quality of sky that is the substance of emptiness, and it is his immensity that underlies the immense cosmos. Nothing visible is real, and there is neither spectator nor spectacle here. There is nothing like emptiness or solidity in nature. All this is only a piece of extended intelligence. Ram replied, the proverbs about the son of a barren woman grinding stones, the horns of a rabbit, the dancing of a hill with its arms extended, oil flowing from sand, marble dolls reading books, clouds in a painting roaring, and other similar adages apply to your words on the reality of an unreal essence of God. I see this world to be full of disease, death, trouble, mountains, emptiness, and other things. How is it, sage, that you tell me that they do not exist? So that I may be certain of this truth, tell me, sage, why you describe this world as unsubstantial, unproduced, and non-existence? Vasishtha replied, no, Ram, that I do not speak contradictions. Hear me explain how unreality appears as real, like the proverbs of the son of a barren woman. All this was unproduced before and did not exist in the beginning of creation. It comes to appearance from the mind like a city in a dream. The mind also was not produced in the beginning of creation and was unreality itself. Therefore, hear me tell you how we come to a notion of it. This unreal mind by itself spreads the false and changing scenes of the visible world. Just as in a dream we see ever changing unreality, is it true? Then the mind exerts its will in the fabrication of the body and spreads the magic scene of the phenomenal world far and wide. The mind, by the potential of its fluctuations, has many actions of its own, such as expansion, jumping, motion, craving, wandering, diving, and seizing, and many other voluntary efforts. With this ends chapter 4 also here, and I think because it is a very subtle discussion, this is very mind absorbing discussion, so I should end the reading over here, and we will start it tomorrow from the 5th chapter onwards. Uh, Here we end with the reading of chapter 4, Shivoham, friends.